Hello and welcome to another pandemic report. I think when we left you, Leslie and I had gotten our first doses of vaccine. We were in lockdown, and I was talking about kerfuffle with the way vaccines were being handled. Well, since then we have been sort of out of lockdown. I guess we're in phase 1 of the out of lockdown, which means that bars and restaurants can be patios open, stores can be open for a limited amount of people, the grocery stores and such who had other stuff that wasn't grocery related can now sell those items because that wasn't allowed during lockdown. But malls are still closed, movie theaters are still closed. I think drive-ins are now open. Gatherings can be bigger and larger and stuff like that. Essentially kind of what you expect. It's almost similar to last time we came coming out of lockdown, slight changes here and there. I don't think you can't get haircuts yet, or your nails done or anything like that. So that's happened. In terms of vaccines, I guess they got a bunch more Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, or they're scheduled to get more, a lot more of them. So essentially they reduced the age. I think it was like around 30 last time I did the video. Now they've reduced it. I don't know how far down it went, maybe like 12 or something like that, maybe even lower, I don't know. But now kids who are in school, so high school, especially high school, and I think middle school age kids can now get vaccinated, which means Sarah and Emily, we asked them if they wanted to. They both said yes, so they have both gotten their first dose of vaccine. In fact, because there has been this influx of vaccines, the extended wait period that the government had has been shrunk down to the minimum wait period that the testing trials went with, which, so I think with Moderna and Pfizer it's 4 weeks. I don't know what it is with AstraZeneca, maybe 6 weeks. I don't know what it is for that. If you had AstraZeneca and you wanted to get the Pfizer Moderna, I think it's something like 6 weeks. If you wanted to get the AstraZeneca, I think you still have to wait the full period, though that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what it is. I didn't get AstraZeneca, so I haven't really been following that. But so what that means is that the girls, when they got their vaccines, got their second dose appointments, and their second dose appointments are before mine and Leslie's. Go figure. In fact, they're like a month ahead of them, even though they got them like a month afterward type thing. Whatever. Even though we are out of lockdown, at least in Ontario, the province where I am located, the government has decided to keep schools closed and continue with online learning until the end of the year. I kind of expected that, even though a lot of people were, crying over, just get the kids back into school and such. But I get it. I mean, the school year was, I guess technically they could have maybe opened it up for like a full term for some of them. Because I think if you were moved off into quadmesters, that I think there was almost a full quadmester left of school. So for those kids, yeah, it would have been okay, no big deal. For the kids who are just sort of going through school all the year round, it would have been a little different. Again, I understand it. The numbers were still up. They're only really going into the phase 1 because I could be wrong, but I think it was based off of vaccine numbers. So the amount of people getting vaccinated, and that's why they were willing to go into phase 1 a little earlier than they had planned. Numbers are dropping, don't get me wrong, numbers are dropping as more and more people get vaccinated, especially, you know, like those who are, well, we've got a lot of people who've already died. Now we're getting people who are being vaccinated. So the combination is kind of, you know, evened out. And then a lot of people have had COVID, so they have probably the antibodies or can develop the antibodies. And so one thing, you know, leads to the next. And so our numbers are going down, our vaccination numbers are going up. So the government decided that, but they still felt, let's keep schools in online mode. No real reason just to switch it over. We'll finish out the year that way, and then we'll pick it up in, you know, September or summer school. I guess there's going to be summer school still, so I don't know. I don't know what's going on with summer school. We're not doing summer school, but that's that. But that brings me to the whole thing of this whole online learning thing that they tried to do. Now, don't get me wrong, for some kids, the online learning is probably better for them. It probably was beneficial for them, but I think that's a very small minority of kids. And that's not to say, like, kids didn't do well during online. I mean, there are kids, even those who would probably still do better off in class, still did really, really well, maybe even better in online learning, even if they wanted to be in class. But there are a lot of things that really don't quite work with this whole online learning, and it comes across the board. So I will start with kids, and then we'll work our way up from there. Or maybe let's work from the top down, right? So essentially, when it came to the online learning, as far as I could tell, the Ontario government, and this is one of the things, one of the reasons why I think their schooling was one of the big factors that they're using to control or to attempt to control the spread, is because it's under the provincial jurisdiction, right? That's, schooling is under them. So they can say, shut down the schools, open the schools, yes schooling, no schooling, this type of schooling, that type of schooling, here, etc., etc. Now, the Ontario government essentially didn't seem to give very much instruction. And this has been over the course of the entire, you know, pandemic, not just this lockdown, but right from the get-go. They gave very little instruction. Now, I don't know if that has to do with contracts that are in place, whether it has to do with the fact of what they actually have control over within, you know, things going on. But essentially, they handed down information, and that went to each different school board. And every single region has a different school board. In fact, they probably have a Catholic school board and a public school board, and they may even have other types of schools as well. And I guess here's your blanket information from the Ontario government, which I'm not in the school board. I wasn't purview to all that information, but from what I gather, it wasn't a lot, and a lot of it was kind of last minute. And so the school boards, each individual school board had to come up with their own plan. So it wasn't like the government said, let's do this. This is what you need to do, and everybody's on the same page. No, they kind of just left it up to each individual school board, each individual school, if they were independent type thing. So not, like I could be talking about our kids here and talking to my friends in Toronto, and they are completely in different situations. Like their school boards are handling it completely different. And that ranges from how they're dealing with online and offline, how they're dealing with when you're in school, what's being taught when, etc., etc., etc. So it really made for a huge variety of different systems and ways of coming up with things, and nobody was really on the same page. Some of the systems I thought were amazing. Some of them I don't even understand how they came up with them. in our area, there was a complete virtual school. So if you wanted to do full-time online, they made a complete virtual school. So you're taken out of the school where you'd be in person. So you're de-enrolled from that and enrolled into the online school. So, and I get it. You know what? That makes perfect sense. As far as I know, how money works and all that kind of stuff, it's based off of how many students in school. So you can't really say this person is attending both schools and have funds for both of them, because it doesn't work that way. So I understand the whole idea of, you know what, taking them out of the physical school, putting them into this make-believe virtual school, and, you know, creating a school. I don't know, I think it was just called virtual school or something like that. I get that part. I also understand with Emily, she had her courses broken up so that she was not like I think she was doing quadmesters. So essentially she'd have 8 courses a year. She's in high school, so she would have, it was broken up into quadmesters, so 2 courses per quad, and each course was for an entire week. So you didn't have crossover, you know, going from one class to another and having that, you know, dealing with other kids. That I totally understand. As far as the pandemic goes, that was an amazing choice. For Sarah, I think it was broken up into essentially the teachers, instead of being like, I mean, she's in elementary, I think, well, middle school. So I think with them, for the most part, I think it was broken up to 2 teachers. So if you had certain classes, normally some classes you would go to and you'd have a different teacher for that. But what they did was just, and I think this went for a lot of different schools and a lot of different grades, and not across the board, don't get me wrong, it may not be the situation that you found, but I think it was like essentially you had a morning and an afternoon teacher, and they taught different classes. You were that all the way through, so you kept those teachers all the way through the year. And what the teachers had to do was, a lot of teachers had to teach courses that they didn't actually have the skills to teach. It's not that they didn't have the skills to teach, but they didn't have the background in them. So somebody who was in math, you know, they often taught math, and they often taught, you know, those type of courses. Then they may have had to teach science as well. Maybe they also had to teach gym. Who knows, right? Like they were just, you know, maybe an English teacher now had to teach history, you know, which is fine. You may not know the information as well, but I mean, we all took the school, we all took the courses, so we have some knowledge of it, you know, whether it's hidden way back in the back of our minds or up front is you know, neither here nor there. But I do know that some of the teachers found themselves in that situation. Again, I get it. They don't have as many, like a high school situation, so that's one way of dealing with it. But I know of other schools where literally they split it up, so in the morning you were at school and in the afternoon you were online. And then they switched it so some kids were at school in the afternoon and online in the morning. I can see how in your mind that might reduce the possibility of transmission, but we all know the you know, the virus has, you know, the fact that it stays on surfaces and you can get it from that. So I don't know how well these schools, man, you know, were cleaning in between this happening, because over essentially a lunch period, I guess, or what was going on. Some schools had different schedules where they were like 2 days, one schedule, 3 days, the next schedule, and then they flipped it 3 days and then 2 days. Some kind of weird schedule. Again, not ideal, but I get it. They're trying different things in order to try and reduce the amount of contact between people, right? Whereas still trying to deliver the course, you know, whatever you're supposed to be teaching. But it all came down to online, because once lockdown happens, you're online and you still maintain those, you know, schedules. So, yeah. Essentially, I know kids, the teachers and such, we're all trying to deal with it as best as possible. Now, some teachers, I mean, that's the school boards, whatever. I think some school boards did a better job of it than others. Just giving you those small little differences in terms of how they work the schedule. Again, the more it is the same and easy, instead of switching it up and moving things, the easier it is for everybody. It's easier on the parents, it's easier on the teachers, it's easier on the students, it's easier on the administration. So I think the best system was probably the kind that Emily had to deal with. The next best might have been what Sarah was dealing with, but these ones where they were flip-flopping and all that kind of stuff, I don't get. I wouldn't be, as a parent, there's no way I would have been able to keep track of all that, and I would have been relying on my kids. We were relying on the kids as it is. So, yeah. Provincial government doesn't give enough information, instruction. Should have just had it all laid out. This is the way it should be done. They don't. It comes down to the boards. They come down and make up their own little version of how they feel it fits in. But then they, as well, don't deliver enough information and structure to the teachers. They kind of said, here's the very, like the minimum, you have to be, I think it was like, you had to be teaching kids or available, well, when it comes to online, okay, so this is different than the in school. When you're in school, you're teaching the course, you're just as normal, the schedule just may be different. So, again, even then, I think they were kind of falling behind of what they were supposed to be doing, but it's kind of hard when normally you're set to teach one period a day, and next thing you know, you're teaching an entire day, an entire week of that subject. It's a little bit hard when you're like kind of like this, right? Oh yeah, by the way, you have to change things up right now. So I get that, but it seems that the instructions that they were giving in terms of online learning was teachers had to be available a certain amount of time, and then they kind of gave a breakdown of a this is how your day, a simulated day could go, but then it was kind of like up to the teachers to make up how that worked for them. And I know a lot of my teacher friends were kind of like, what does that mean? I don't understand what they're going. So what ended up happening was you had a lot of teachers teaching all sorts of different ways when it came to online. And in my mind, some of those teachers weren't teaching at all. So, I'll give you some instances, whether they be from personal experience or through friends, with kids in school. So, essentially, I think for pretty much everybody, didn't matter what system you're on. It was almost like in the morning you take attendance and in the afternoon you take attendance. So I guess everybody had like a lunch break in the middle, right? So in the morning the kids are supposed to log on, they take attendance, and then whatever you do your school, whatever is laid out, whatever plan the school or the teacher has laid out, then you go do your lunch break where everybody's offline. And then you come back after that and attendance is taken again. I get that, whatever. But what found was happening is, and I get it, kids will be kids. Some of them will, for whatever reason, they may not log in at all. They may log in late. They may log in early and then can't figure things out, or maybe they can't log in, or whatever. There's all sorts of different things, reasons and stuff. But I know that there's some teachers who decided that, well, because I'm not, maybe I'm not getting everybody there all at the same time as I normally would in class, I won't take attendance, right? To which, administration comes down and says, well, you have to take attendance. If you don't take attendance, it's essentially akin to them skipping school, and that is part of the record. Okay, Well, I know of a teacher who went from I'm not taking attendance to I'm just marking everybody here. That didn't really solve anything. So yes, there's that type of teacher. And I'm not going to say that, all teachers are bad or all teachers are good or I do know some teachers who did amazing jobs. And I talked with a few people and they found that it was a lot better for younger kids. I think the teachers seemed to be more involved. But as you started getting older, the kids' ages started getting older and older. That's where you started to find teachers doing less teaching. And I'll say teaching because, it seems that there are some teachers who their idea of online learning is you would take attendance and then post work online, whether they be workbooks, reading, whatever, or assignments or something like that, and then say, if you have any questions, I'm available. Because they had to be available online. Like, I think that was the instructions from the boards. They had to be available online a certain amount of hours. So they didn't really teach anything. They let the kids essentially try and learn by themselves. And if the kids had any questions, they could ask the teacher. I don't know about you, but if you know kids, there are going to be some kids who are very into it. And yes, if they don't understand anything, they're going to ask the teacher. But I mean, when you're in school, how many times did people raise their hands and be like, I don't understand this or anything like that? And unless it was the entire class where the whole class is just like, I don't get it. And the teacher notices that, for the most part, the teacher just continued teaching, and people who didn't understand it. Maybe they went home and asked their parents. Maybe they just didn't do the work. Maybe they got it wrong and whatever. But I know from a fact that a lot of the times if somebody doesn't understand something, especially kids, they don't ask necessarily. Some will, but a lot won't. So just saying, here, read this, and if you don't understand it, ask me. That's not teaching, right? Like, I got better instruction in university than that. And university is kind of supposed to be the pinnacle of you do your own learning, and we'll be here to, tell you if you're doing it right or wrong or how well you're doing. That's not supposed to be elementary school, or it's not supposed to be high school. It's not supposed to be middle school. And it's definitely not supposed to be elementary school. But I think it's more of a middle school, high school type area, even though I did hear that there was some really bad, similar type things going on, even in the elementary schools. But again, teachers all over the place, right? Like, some are going to be good, some are going to be bad, and apparently some people are just not even going to bother. For whatever reason. But I do know that for our girls, the online learning was not the way to go. We needed them to be in class. We needed them to be in check. They are old enough that we can't, we can't tell them to do stuff. We don't know when they're doing it, what they're doing it, and all that kind of stuff. Essentially, if something gets missed, we may see, a week down the road that's like, oh, a note from the teacher saying, oh, can you get your assignment to me? And we'd be like, why didn't you do your assignment? It's like, oh, for whatever excuses kids want to give, right? Oh, I forgot. Oh, I did hand it in. Maybe she must not have got it. Oh, I didn't want to. Oh, I'm busy doing this other assignment. I don't have time to do that. Whatever excuse, right? You know how to make excuses. So do kids. But yeah, we found without the teacher being there on top of them, it really didn't help to push them along, right? It didn't help them in the sense of, we're doing this work today, and, normally by the end of the day, you hand it in. When you get whatever it is, whatever's been completed, that's what you've done, right? And the teacher can gauge how you're doing in that. But we found personally that some teachers were, like, oh, you didn't hand in the assignment. oh, don't worry, whenever you get a chance, can you get that into me type thing. And this would be some things where I'd be like, that should have taken 5 minutes to do, and that was the entire assignment for the day, an entire day of schooling, and that was the assignment for the day. And the due date was like a week, and yeah, I don't get. Again, we were kind of hands off. Our two girls here are, old enough to be responsible enough for themselves. It's their choice to do however they want to do it. But I did find I was kind of let down by the teachers, because the teachers weren't really on their case. If something wasn't handed in, it wasn't like, hand it in or you're going to get 0. It was, like we would get, personally, we would get a phone call and be like, is everything okay? Are they okay? To which we would respond, yeah, it's fine. It's like, oh, are you having trouble? Is she having, troubles getting online? She, and it's be like, no. This is her choice. She's doing this on her, her choice. It's between you and her. You guys deal with it. We're gonna bring it up in the fact that let them know that, hey, you haven't handed this in, and we'll get whatever excuse we want to get back, but you can't make anybody do anything, right? If they don't want to, once they hit a certain age, it's a matter of they're either going to do it or they're not going to do it. And it seemed like the teachers weren't really penalizing them so much for not doing things. It was kind of like, oh yeah, well, can you please do that? Like they thought like this pandemic was like some crazy traumatizing thing. No, man, like I'll tell you right now, like at least we had, two girls, I'm not going to say which one is which. One preferred to be at home, the other preferred to be at school. One's more social than the other. Just the way it is. But, that doesn't change the fact that you still got to do your work. And one of the problems I find with the online learning is kids aren't necessarily doing their work if they don't really have to, because why would you, right? And if the teachers aren't on top of them and penalizing them for it, then why do it? If I was in school and I didn't have to do the work, like when I remember being in school where not only did I have to do the work, but I had to show, like, say it's a test, right? Maybe it's a math test. And it's like 200 plus 200. I can't just say 400. I had to show how I got to 400. And that was part of the mark. Attendance was part of the mark. Being there was part of the mark. Getting the right answer was part of the mark. And showing how I got to the right answer was part of the mark. So that's how you got the mark. You couldn't get perfect. And that was my problem, is I would just do the work, give you the answers, and this teacher would be like, well, you didn't show any of your work. I'd be like, why would I spend time doing all that when I can just do it in my head, right? And they're like, well, that's part of your work. I need to see how you got there, to see where, for the couple of questions that I got wrong, why you got them wrong. It's like, I can probably figure out why I got them wrong. I was thinking one thing and it ended up being another. It's just, in your head, blah, blah, blah. That's the way it goes, right? But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It just doesn't seem to be the case. And it's just exasperated when you go to online learning and the teacher isn't even in front of you. And yeah, so from the top on down, all the way down to the students, right? Some students are going to be great. Some students are going to be terrible. Some students who are in the middle, they're not going to be that great. I think consensus is for a lot of people that marks are way down as a result of the pandemic. Or not really I won't call it because of the pandemic, but because of what was decided and how things were done. Now, the other problem with online learning is when you have really, really young kids, keeping them in front of a computer, kind of hard. And especially when you have parents who need to go to work. So yes, I get it. We're in a lockdown. Only essential jobs are supposed to be, people are only supposed to be doing essential work. But if the parents are all essential, then how do they go to work? Well, kids are trying to do online learning, but there's nobody, you can't leave the kids at home alone. You see that problem? So, on one hand, we've got all the dysfunctionality that trickled down right from the top of the government all the way down to students. Everybody trying to do, some people trying to do their best, other people trying to do their least. And then you get parents who are over here who have no say in the matter, who are trying to deal with it. Whether it be, having to be there and keep their kids to do, in front of the screens and do their work, or having to pick up the pieces from the teachers not even teaching. Maybe they had one of those teachers who wasn't teaching anything and they had to teach their kids. And it's like, I know what you're saying. Well, you should be there. You should be involved. You should be teaching your kids. It's like, yes. But you have to remember, there's a full day worth of school. There's not a full day after school for teaching. Why are we sending them to school if we have to teach them again? Right? So, yeah. I don't want to... This is probably already too long as it is. I don't want to keep going on. But essentially, I get it for the online learning schools, the people who opt into online learning because they enjoy online learning and they feel that is better for them, not because they were scared to go to school. Those kids probably still have the same problems. But for those kids, that was probably good. As long as they got teachers who were willing to teach and could teach and figured out ways to teach online. I will say I'm very disappointed in terms of the school boards and the government who didn't really give enough instruction. And that goes across the board. I will say I'm thankful for the teachers who tried to actually teach in this kind of stuff. But I'm very disappointed in the teachers who essentially just washed their hands. And maybe they are like that in class as well. I don't know. But my idea of I took attendance and now I'm available if you have any questions, that's not teaching, man. That's not teaching. And a lot of parents were all about the psychological impact of this whole online learning and the lockdown. I'm like, whatever. They're all about, not seeing their friends and all this kind of stuff. And that's all baloney. That's garbage. The only reason why any kid would have that problem is A, they're an extremely sensitive kid, or B, because you keep drilling that into them. They're learning that through the parents. Because I'll tell you right now, when I was a kid, I went to French immersion. I didn't see anybody in my school outside of school. So I had school friends, and then I had home friends. My home friends all went to different schools. See how that works? You make friends where you make friends. You have friends where you have friends. In a pandemic, yes, you don't see as many people, but you can still see friends. You don't need to go to school to see those friends. You're going to have friends somewhere. Now, for some people who are more rural and get bussed in and they don't have anybody for who knows how long distance away, well, in all likelihood, they weren't playing too much with their friends outside of school. That's probably for sure, but, I mean, that's probably a small portion of people. And, I mean, it's for short periods of time. Right? Like, I mean, there were times where they could see friends. So, it's not like they were going, it's a war zone and their friends are dying left, right, and center and all this kind of stuff's happening. No. That's traumatic. Not being able to see your friend or go have a birthday party or go see your friends on their birthday or anything like that, that's just kind of disappointing. Right? But, yeah. I honestly, this whole online learning, this whole thing that they've gone around with, and I do know that here in Ontario, the government was trying to do, I think their whole idea is they want to move to completely online all the time, right? I think that's what they really want. In their mindset, that's the way to go. That's the way to teach, because, you know, pay less people. Teacher can teach hundreds of thousands of people at a time, you know, whatever. All you had to do is pay people to mark stuff for them. But the actual teaching portion, it's one person, one screen, teach out the world, right? That's the way they advertise the online learning. You know, teacher can be in one spot and they could have hundreds of thousands of students all over the world. And I think that's what's in the mind of the government of today, at least in our province. But I think this may have shown them that that probably is not gonna work. But yeah, into phase 1, and I think phase 2 may be coming sooner than we think, because I think they're basing it all around how many people get vaccinated. So the more people get vaccinated, the more people who get second doses, etc., the faster we're going to go through our phases. So yeah, here's fingers crossed things get back to normal out here. But I don't know. This has just been a cluster frack of a whole thing all over the world. And hopefully we can all learn something from this. That's the only thing. I mean, fingers crossed. Somebody out there, after all the debate and all that kind of stuff, somebody says this is how things should be done, period. And then everybody can get on board. Because right now it's just free for all. Nobody knows anything. Washing their hands. Hopefully this works. This is an educated guess. We're doing the best that we can. I'm sick of that. I'm sick of that. We're smarter than that. We really are. Well, some of us are. Some people are still out there not wearing masks and gathering in groups. So hopefully you're not one of them. Stay safe. Stay sane. Stay the course. Till next video, take care. Have a good one.